Hello and welcome back once again to Movie Reviews. So went and saw another movie today after all. I had an option of what I was going to see today, and I decided to see the shorter one just because I am a little bit tired. Didn't get much sleep last night, had a long night at work. So I opted for the 90-minute movie over the 2-hour movie. Saved myself a half hour. So today I went and saw Minions. Again, it's been out for a little bit, but still relatively new. What did I think of Minions? I was excited to see Minions because I love Despicable Me. I liked Despicable Me 2. It was on par with the first one, but not necessarily the same reason I liked the first one that I liked the second one. So I liked them both. Haven't really seen many of the Minion mini movies they put out. I think there's 3 or 4 of those. So I haven't really seen any of those, but I was like, you know what, it's got something to do with Despicable Me, and I like Despicable Me, so I'm going to go see it. And basically it kind of tells this backstory of where the Minions came from, and apparently the Minions are eternal. Like, the opening credits is showing stuff that I didn't realize till later on in the film how it tied in, because it's like a little 2D animation versus the 3D CGI animation that they're using for Minions. But they're showing this whole thing while they're doing the opening credit song, or and then they go into the opening narration, and then like midway through the movie I'm like, oh, that's what the opening credit was. Like, it wasn't that it said anything in the movie that triggered it. It was just like I finally caught on to it midway through the movie, which I feel bad for saying that, because that's kind of non-observant on my part, I guess. But yeah, so apparently Minions have been around since the beginning of time, and Minions exist to serve a leader. They always have, and it shows like how they change leaders. Like, each time they find a leader, they follow it for a while, then something happens where the leader dies or something, so they have to move on to find a different leader. So it shows them going through the ages during the opening narration, and then it gets to a point where they end up on their own inside of this cave, and they end up building a society. They have like built, houses, skyscraper type of things, and it's just them, and they're having fun living on their own. And then as the years go by, they start to wear down. They're like, yeah, we're living this life, but it's like the same life every day. Kind of like, if you ever seen that episode of SpongeBob where Squidward moves to the squid community, and he's like excited because everyone's into the same stuff he's into, but then after a while his big smile starts to slowly come down and turn into a frown because he's doing the exact same thing every day, and there's no excitement in his life anymore because SpongeBob isn't there. That's kind of how the Minions run down, to where eventually they're like still sitting there playing ping pong with each other, and they're just kind of like, it's like they're not really. Well, I think one of them was actually laying on his face, and he's just kind of holding the paddle up. So they're getting run down, and they're fearful that one of them's fearful that they're going to end up dying. Dying out. Basically, they're going to run themselves into extinction. So this one minion named Kevin comes up with a plan that he's going to be the first one in centuries to actually leave the cave and go out and find them a new leader, person to follow, and then he'll send for them. So he needs a couple volunteers to go with him, and there's one little tiny one whose name is it Bob? Yeah, it was Bob. And at first Kevin doesn't want Bob to go because of how small he is. He doesn't think he'd be strong enough to survive the trip. Then Stuart, who was actually sleeping during Kevin's speech of what he was going to do, gets volunteered. Someone raises his hand like, hey, I want to go, and then everyone steps back, and he's like sitting there sleeping like, huh? And he realizes he's selected, but he's not sure for what, so he's all happy at first. And then Kevin's like, I still need more volunteers, and Bob's still for like, me. And finally he's like, oh, fine, no one else is volunteering, come on. They head out to find a new boss. Then we follow them going across the ocean and everything, and eventually finding America, New York City. So they're going around the city, just kind of exploring things, and they end up finding out about Villain Con, I think it was. It was like an assembly of all these evil villains all in one place having a convention. And they're like, hey, that's a perfect place for us to go to find a new boss. It's like they're trying to get there. They have some more adventures up until getting there. They get there, they get a new boss, and the boss sends them on a mission. And as they're going on the mission, the events don't go exactly the way they planned, but they still accomplish the mission. But because of the way they accomplish the mission, the boss kind of turns on them and is going to hold them prisoner. So then they're battling against their new boss, which actually kind of makes them the heroes because they've turned against their boss now. So all the other minions eventually show up. And then there's, the final epic battle between Kevin, the leader of the minions, and the villain boss. And it all kind of comes down to where everything kind of gets resolved, but then at the same time, stuff isn't resolved because the villain still exists and she's still hell-bent on completing her mission. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, I'm just going to leave it there. But, it's a kid's movie, so obviously everything turns out happily ever after. But I'll leave it up to you to figure out why. There is a lot more that happens in the movie. There's, while Kevin's away, a new boss does show up to the other minions, but something happens to him. Not going to say what. Go watch the movie if you want to know. So at first when Kevin, calls him, he's like, hey, I got a new boss. And they're like, yeah, we don't need it. We got a boss here. But the one thing about the movie is the minions don't speak English. Very few words that they speak are in English. Some of them are broken kid-like English. Like when they say hello, they say bedo. So it's similar but not really. If you've ever seen the Minions, you know that. But as they're talking throughout the movie, explain stuff, it almost seems like their language is a combination of all languages. Some of the stuff they say, it sounds like Spanish words that I know. Are the Minions just speaking Spanish? If I knew Spanish better, would I actually be able to understand what they're saying? But then, some of the stuff they say sounds like it's in French. So I think it's actually just, they write out the dialogue for the Minions, but then, they switch every 5 words or something to a different language. So you can't really figure out what they're actually saying, but occasionally, 1 or 2 words will be English, or I'm sure it's different in other countries. They probably have them where they speak, more frequent English words, but then if you're watching it in France, there'll be more frequent English words, but then French words will be peppered in, kind of like the English is here. I don't know for sure, but that's possible. So yeah, I think the Minions is just kind of a combination of all languages, but it makes it a little hard to follow what's going on in the movie. You just kind of have to rely on the visuals and not so much what the Minions are actually saying to each other. Yeah, so overall, it was an okay movie. Was it as good as the Despicable Me films? Not really. Other than cashing in on the Minions' name and giving the Minions their first full-length motion picture, it really didn't need to be made. It didn't really add anything to the story other than explain how the Minions came to be. And that was that they always existed. Yeah, it really didn't add anything. It was kind of a pointless movie, but it was still a fun movie. Again, targeted towards a child audience. It served its purpose. A lot of the kids in the theater were laughing at stuff that I can't believe kids laugh at. I mean, honestly, did I laugh at that stupid of stuff when I was a kid? I don't know. There was some comedy in it that I enjoyed, but again, usually when the adults were laughing, the kids weren't, and then the kids would just randomly laugh at goofy stuff. For example, I don't know if I mentioned this in the Despicable Me 2 review that I did, but when I went to see that in the theater, or actually before I even saw it in the theater, I was working at the theater, and almost every kid that went into that movie, when they came out, they were doing the be-da thing from the fire scene. And I was like, okay, that has to be a prominent part in the movie. It happens more than just there, if that's what they're latching on to. No, it only happens in that fire scene. When he comes in the room, he's like, beat and chops through the wall. That's the only time that happens in the entire movie, but that's what the kids latched onto. When they came out, they were all like, beat, and it's like, that was such a small part of the overall movie. Why is that what they latched onto? So, I don't know, I guess the people who make these Minion movies know what kids like, because kids latch onto the Minions, where the adults, like me, who go and watch it, we latch onto more of the human characters, I guess, like Gru and the girls, and in the second one, what was the lady's name that he was interested in? I don't remember, but, you know, like, I grasp more into that story, and the Minions are just kind of background players, and then the kids latch onto the Minions, who don't really serve any purpose in the movie, but they love them over whatever else is going on in the movie. So yeah. So basically, as far as the star rating on Minions, like I said, it was an okay film, but an unnecessary film, but kids liked it, and that's what it was targeted for. Obviously not for people like me who have a stuffed fluffy unicorn. It's so fluffy! But yeah, so as far as a star rating on Minions, I would probably say, I want to say a 3 because it was kind of just an average middle of the road movie. Yeah, you know, I was going to say I don't want to go quite that high because I've been rating everything else kind of low. But you know what? Yeah, it was middle of the road. It was a 3. I was going to say a 2.5 because I'd been rating everything else a 3.5. But you know, it was deserving of a 3. I'll give it that. So yeah, that's it for my review of Minions. This one's a little bit shorter than the others were, finally. Not that much to say about it. So, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see you at the movies.